So let's start with 8 bits and a byte, seeing as they are the reason that this panel is actually happening. Is that the first
cool.
I didn't know that. So hi, we're 8 bits and a byte. My name is Nicole. That's Dane.
I'm Dane.
Yeah, we make all kinds of tremendously terrible tech. That's kind of the name we gave it. All kinds of electronics projects, and we share them on YouTube and websites like Instructables. Yeah, I think that's a short.
Cool. And Dan?
Hi, yeah, so professionally I'm a teacher, head of computing, and I got to a point where I really wanted to engage all students in computing. So I turned to the Raspberry Pi and started making projects, simple things like LEDs flashing, and then gradually over the years built up and made more exciting projects, which of course the kids play around with at school and go, wow, you know, get me a Raspberry Pi, get me coding. And I keep trying to make them bigger and more inspiring so that, you know, each student looks at it and goes, yeah, I want to try that or build something. So yeah, that's where I am.
Lovely. And now we will go with Dr. Zoidus Infuser himself, as Chris Parrott.
Hi, Chris. So yeah, I'm sort of casually interested in firewalls. Not actually computing yet. I did compete a bit last year, but my background is actually in robotics. Pretty much had done the career path that Matt talked about in his talk earlier of going through university, doing a PhD, and now I'm a product engineer at Pimoroni. So that started this year, so exciting. And yeah, I do lots of robotics projects, tweet about them, did YouTube for like a few months and then realized it wasn't for me. But yeah.
Fantastic, thank you. And we've also got our 2 opening speakers as well joining us today. Footleg, would you care to reintroduce yourself for the second time and not the last, the third time actually, not the last?
Yeah, I'm Footleg. I feel like a bit of an imposter on this panel because I'm not in any way professionally involved in robotics or engineering. My background's in life sciences. I do a lot of STEM outreach, and robotics has really been the kind of vehicle for me to kind of push that enthusiasm for technology and making stuff, physical computing, as well as running code clubs when we were allowed to kind of hold in-person activities. I'm one of the people who pushes STEM activities through my workplace at the Centre STEMs, and I've built robots for firewalls and now branching out into designing electronics for my robots, and that's really kind of taking off as the main thing that's eating my time up in my hobby making now.
Lovely. And last but not least, Matt, you are on mute right now. So I'm going to, there you go. So tell us who you are and why you're here.
Yeah. So I'm Matt Timmons-Brown. I gave the talk earlier. So most people know me as the Raspberry Pi guy. I run a Raspberry Pi YouTube channel. I'm also author of the book Learn Robotics with Raspberry Pi. It's published by No Starch Press. It's a book that's used to guide newbie hobbyists, lots of the firewalls people, hopefully, about how to make your sort of first robot, add sensors and whatnot. And so Dan and I were both No Starch Press authors. And alongside that, I'm, as I spoke about in the talk, I'm an undergraduate computer science student at the University of Edinburgh, and I'm trying to sort of focus and study a lot of robotics at the moment.
That is fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. So these are our panel. Now, this panel is made by you, our panelists, and our audience. So I've got a few questions that I've had put to me, and questions of my own that I've got for you all. But what I'm hoping the main meat of this will be is I'm going to be able to bring people into this session and put them live on stage. All you have to do, if you want to ask a panelist a question, is click the share audio and video button, and we will be, or ask in the chat, and I'll try and bring in questions from the chat as well. And we can either read back your question to the panel or bring you on stage to ask them. If you click that button, I'm going to put you on stage. So please don't click it unless you want to. So we've already had someone who's clicked it. I don't know if he meant to click it, but I'm going to bring him on anyway. It's Dave. Let's bring him onto the screen. Is that going to work? We'll see if he shows up or not. I think sometimes anyone who's clicked that button get to be on this moderation panel until they go. So if you clicked it and then unclicked it, then we're not going to see him. Okay, we're not going to see him. Fine. So you know how to ask your questions. I'm going to start with some questions that I've got for you. And as this is a Pi Wars conference, I thought it might be interesting to know if you've got a favourite Pi Wars robot that is not a robot that you've made. Have you seen the Pi Wars robots? Do you have a robot that's particularly impressed you? And if so, why? What's your favourite Pi Wars robot?
Okay.
So the whole panel.
I can start because I was a visitor of the 2019 event, and I would have to say Brian's faceplant was probably my favourite because it worked mostly.
It's a very impressive robot. We actually have a talk about how to build a self-balancing robot coming on the Lightning Talks tomorrow. I don't know if you've seen the Mabel robot. I think it's Raspibotics.
Yeah, from Harry.
Harry, exactly.
Yeah, very impressive project, that.
He's going to be coming on for the Lightning Talks to tell us how you might go about trying to build your own self-balancing robot.
I remember a few years ago we had Triangular, which was one of the robots at Pi Wars, or a Cam Jam or something.
Yeah, it was. No, I think it was the first robot with Mechanom wheels in Pi Wars. Is that right?
And that was really nice, and that was also really nicely engineered. Obviously, like a triangular sort of wheelbase and things like that's the control of that is obviously a little bit more involved than a just a sort of straight linear robot with steering wheels or something like that. So I thought that was really neat. I can't remember who actually made that one though.
Someone in chat is saying it's Tom Olin's robot.
Okay.
And we had another three-wheeler when I was competing called Codebreaker, which was another really fun one. So I've just got some of those Mechanom wheels myself from Pimaroni. They've just started stocking those Mechanom wheels. So that's a fun little project when I next get a chance to build a robot. I think a lot of people actually in the various robot clubs and things that I go to have, there we go. Chris has got them. I think it was actually you that was responsible for getting them on the Pimaroni store.
I nudged them in the right direction, yeah.
He's got a lot to answer for.
They're really see them. I've seen them in actual like lab robots. We have some of like the robotic platforms at the university have Mechanom wheels and things like that. So they're used all the way up, and so they're really cool.
Yeah, the KUKA, I forget which platform it is, but there's like a big one with an arm on. That's good.
Yeah, we have. That's exactly. We have one of the KUKA platforms that has those Mechanom wheels and stuff, and it's really cool.
It always struck me as a little bit dangerous in Pi Wars because you've got the obstacle course, and then you need something a little bit more grippy. So I was quite impressed by, I think it was the Shrub Bug. The Forest Fighters team had swappable wheels, so they could run Mechanoms when they needed some control, and then swap out when it was a remote control challenge and just drive like a traditional car. So I like that quite a bit. And of course, Mark Mellows in the chat has got a different way of solving the problem of not having enough grip. I don't know if you've seen it, but he's got like a fan car robot that holds itself down by the air force. It generates its own downforce with a huge fan.
Yeah, I've seen that driving around on the underside of a table. It is quite amazing. For me, it's the quirky robots that stand out, and you've already called out two of them, possibly three of them. The one that I guess sticks in my memory most from the first Pi Wars I went to was the one, I don't know what the name of it was, but it was like a teapot, like a bright pink plastic kettle on wheels, and it was just a really eccentric looking robot, and it was kind of pointing lasers and shooting Nerf darts at ducks. And I just thought, this is great. It's really entertaining, and kind of stood out from the crowd of the kind of robots that a lot of Pi Wars robots are built on a formula which is very successful, which is kind of like a fairly rigid four-wheeled kind of rectangular structure that's very robust and builds very capable robots. I like the ones that look a bit crazy and stand out from the crowd.
So we have another question, which is actually a question that I wanted to ask as well, but Brian Starkey has beat me to it by asking it in chat. And this, I guess, I'm particularly thinking of 8 Bits and a Byte and Dan Aldred when I asked this question. because I've seen your YouTube channels and in Dan's case his website, where there are loads of finished projects. I've got quite a lot of storage space, frankly, full of unfinished projects. And I could probably count on the fingers of two hands how many Maker projects I've actually finished. So how on earth do you do it? How do you finish our projects? What's your trick? What's your secret recipe?
I think I just I concentrate on one project at a time. I think that's probably it. So, you know, if it takes 6 months to make that whole project and get it finished, then I'll spend 6 months on it. And also, obviously, being a teacher, and obviously I teach computing, but, you know, I haven't got those hours in the daytime to be working on the project. So it's kind of a bit of therapy or, you know, relief when you get home. You can kind of spend a couple of hours tinkering around and, you know, over time that builds up. But I would probably say I don't, if I'm working on a project, I'll stay working on the project until it's finished. I might have 4 or 5 different ideas floating around at the time, but I'll always write them down or get the parts ready. And put them in a box somewhere and think, right, once I've finished whatever I'm building, then I'll move on to that one. And some projects, obviously, they don't work, so I just scrap them. And I suppose I could spend hours and hours trying to sort it out, but at the point you get to it where you think, right, I can't find the right software for this. This isn't going to work, so I'm going to shelve it. And a year or 18 months later, you might read something online. You go, oh, that's what I was trying to do. And, you know, somebody's got a better library out there for it, or somebody's released some hardware that's more suitable. So yeah, I think it's just focusing on that one project.
Only actually having one project on the go, that's incredibly disciplined.
That's amazing discipline.
I'm not saying I haven't got other ideas. I mean, I've got a notebook with 15 different projects I want to start, but I think maybe being a teacher and enjoying learning, I think I probably I like to spend the time reading around how to solve the problem and how to kind of actually get the project finished and get it working. And I don't mind spending, as many of us do, time reading around and asking other people and getting support. And it's a hobby as well, so there's no pressure to get it finished. I can imagine if you were making it for a show or to sell to somebody, or for a magazine, you've got a deadline, you've got 3 weeks to do it. Whereas I can say, well, if I haven't made that much progress in 3 weeks, it doesn't matter. It's for fun. It's therapeutic. It's enjoyable. Which is So should I really be working on 5 different projects then?
That's a good question. I think we're a lot like you, Rob. We have a lot of half-finished projects lying around, projects that we've kind of started but didn't finish, stuff like that. That's a good question. I don't know. How do we finish stuff?
For me, it's shaming. We live rather small, so I can't hide the project. I can't pretend it doesn't exist. So every time I go get a snack, it's staring at me and telling me to finish it. So either that, or I then kill it off, so take it apart and it never existed and we don't talk about it. So 2 options.
And for your finished projects, do you keep them around? Like, is there a shelf somewhere in your house with like a coronavirus being slapped by a toilet?
So we tend to reuse all the parts. So we have the coronavirus; it's still here, but the electronics we've taken apart and we've reused them. I think that's our trick to getting stuff done.
I don't know if I should ask the other panelists this. I know Matt can finish stuff. Actually, I'm not sure Footleg can finish stuff. Does anyone else have an opinion on how to finish projects?
I'm bad at it, so no. The best projects or the most complete projects I've done are the ones where it's been really limited scope. Things like this little folding screen, like fold-out screen, like very defined scope of what it could do, and that's it. And that the sign behind me, I wanted my logo, so very defined. All the other ones you keep feature creeping, and that's the biggest problem.
Yeah, I think the complexity of projects is what's meant that mine has started to stretch out into the kind of infinite future.
Yeah. Someone said in the chat, when you have deadlines, that's a big thing. You have something to work towards, or Pywall is one of those things, right? Where you have, you need to deliver something, and you have some very like key metrics for success. Like, I don't know, can it go to school course, for example? and things like that. So like a key metric for success and deadlines, then you sort of have a better, you have a much better chance of actually sort of finishing off what you're starting.
Well, Rachel says in the chat, kind of jokingly, only do simple, easy to finish projects. I think there's some truth in that. Like, you know, I can see, like, if you're just whizzing through loads of projects, maybe once you've got to the point where it works and it does the thing, that's the point at which you say that's the project done and move on to the next one. Whereas sometimes with our Firewalls robots, we can kind of just think, now, what if I did this? Couldn't I do this? And you know, the thing can just explode into a task as big as the time allows.
But remember, though, it's the whole process that's important and enjoyable. So, you know, the end of the project isn't, you know, you get so much satisfaction and enjoyment through, well, hopefully satisfaction and enjoyment through the process. And, you know, you might get halfway through a project, but think of everything you've learned. Think of all the new skills you've learned. Think of all the new tools you've learned, and that then you take through to your next project. So, you know, you might have 5 projects 50% completed, but that's 250% of new skills and techniques and experience that you've gathered. So, that's, you know, don't always see the end point of the project as the end. You know, it's the journey that's important.
I completely agree with that.
The destination,
Yeah.
you know.
Fun anecdote about that. So my second robot I built was the big hexapod I did a talk about last year, and that got finished enough. I never, like, it was one of those where feature creep kept happening, but it kind of served its purpose in that it was a piece of evidence I used to get onto my PhD of I can do hardware because my degrees didn't show I could, and then I was happy with it being in a box for 5 years, because it had served its purpose in a roundabout way.
Yeah,
even though that's not what I built it for originally.
Someone said something about the electric skateboard that I made in the chat.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that exact thing.
Well, that similar to what you were just saying, Chris. That is sat in a bag and hasn't been. I haven't been on it for, like, I don't know, a good few years now. Coupled with the fact that it is a death trap, but yeah, no, it sort of serves its purpose, especially when you, if you have. I made that, and I see Rob is here as well, and Rob and Brian is also here. They helped me from Cambridge Makespace make that. That was also like making it. That was made almost for the YouTube video or whatever. You know, I made it because I was interested in it, but making it for the YouTube video. So I guess it's a bit like when you make a robot for Firewalls. After you have that, it's like, you know, you want to move on to something else or whatever. So each project sort of serves its purpose, I think.
And also, I think the connections that you make with people. So, you know, when I get stuck on something, I don't know if you saw, I made a battleships game with LEDs, and you ring it up on the telephone and put your coordinates in via the dial on the telephone. And I had to have 2 separate pies, one in the telephone and then one in the LED board. But I needed them to send the coordinates over. So there's the Python. See, I can't even remember what it was called now, but anyway, there's a Python library that allows you to communicate between the 2 Raspberry Pis via your network. I haven't the foggiest how to use it. Went on Twitter, asked a few people, and you know, some fantastic people came back and said, "Oh yeah, this is how you do it. You know, here's how you adapt the code," and you know, formed a really good working relationship with these people, and you know, it was learned how they're getting on and what they've been up to and stuff. And I thought, yeah, that's for me, that was just as important and enjoyable as actually getting this telephone to speak to an LED board. So yeah, maybe a bit more holistic about it, and that's I suppose why I do the projects for the kids at school, try and get them on board. You know, don't worry if it doesn't work. We want, you know, it's the learning process that's important, and it's the journey. So thanks to everybody else who helps me complete the projects as well.
Rachel's actually got a couple of really interesting points in the chat about this. Sometimes people give up on projects because they lose interest or it gets too difficult. It's important to know when to abandon something and let it go. And this is something that I really personally identify very strongly with, because I used to work on a Minecraft mod project that eventually it got so complicated that I basically burnt myself out trying to make it. You know, like I got to the point where it was driving me crazy trying to do the thing, and I ended up just backing away from it completely and stopping. Have there ever been any projects like that for any of you that you wanted to do, but you ended up having to quit?
Like entering Pi Wars.
Well, like entering Pi Wars, except you actually did it, so that doesn't count.
I was trying to build a voice changer. There's a Python library where you can speak into a microphone, and if you have a short video clip of, say, a celebrity, it will the AI will analyze the video and pull out the sounds and then convert your phrase into the sound of that person. So if you wanted to say something like, "Hello, how are you today, Pi Wars?" It's got a clip of Donald Trump, and it will convert me talking now into sound like Donald Trump. So immediately I had to stop there because of, but the library was old. I think it was 2017, and it wasn't working on the Raspberry Pi. And I played around with it and tried to adapt it, and I got to a point where I thought, I can't do this at this point. So I have parked it. But I know that in 2, 3, 4 months, even a year or something, there will be another library or an adaptation of that will work on the Raspberry Pi, or somebody has ported onto the Raspberry Pi, and it's like, okay, now I can go back to that one. So it's a case of I can't do it at this point. I've had to stop.
Yeah, sometimes it's good to put a project on hold to either abandon permanently or wait for something new to come along to give you more inspiration for it.
That is a fantastic segue into a question that we've had from Tim to a completely different topic, because we spent enough time talking about finishing projects. So Tim Richardson says, where do you get your inspiration from? Where do all these amazing and just constant ideas come from? Where we see you tweeting and YouTubing and putting stuff up about all kinds of different stuff that I would never have thought of. What makes you think of this stuff?
I don't know. You're busy with something, and then you I don't know. Yeah, you have this idea. What if this could be done by robots, or I don't know. Yeah.
You can get I think it's a case of sort of spreading yourself out and being very receptive to lots of places where inspiration can come from. So lots of stuff on Twitter. I heard Amy speaking about Pinterest earlier. Things like Twitter and seeing lots of stuff on YouTube and things like that. They can give you some neat ideas and stuff. Somebody just said, I get inspiration from breaking laptops. I actually found that can be quite cool. If you have a certain part or something like that, say you have a display or something like that you really want to use, or a certain type of motor or something like that, then you can maybe sort of use that as there's lots of different paths of going about getting to the thing that you want to make. So yeah, if you want to make something around a certain component or something like that, then you can definitely get inspired that way as well.
And Chris, I know you've got some video game inspiration for your walkers.
Yeah, so that was kind of because my first job out of university was as a games developer, so I learned a lot of that there. But that sort of was really interesting because it meant that I could do all these concepts for robots in a simulator without having to do it in hardware. But then I spent £400 on the parts to build a biped anyway, so yeah, a lot of my sort of inspiration comes from what kind of robots don't I have, and also what cool parts are out. Pimoroni released the inky impression late last year, and that was before I was working for them. And it's I can make a picture frame with that. And just the idea came to me, so that's what I did, and because there was a new thing available. And that was probably one of the more complete projects because it was very focused in scope again.
And what about when you want to do something that appeals to kids? We've got these, Dan in particular has got the STEM focus, and Matt, I think a lot of children have enjoyed your book. What makes you think this project is something that children would find appealing and engage with? Is it your memory of what you would have liked to do as a kid, or have you got some children who are your focus group that you've done this stuff by? How does that work?
Well, I've got 1,000, 1,200 kids at my disposal at work. So, we're running Raspberry Pi clubs at school, and often I'll say to them, "What is it you want to build?" And they'll say, "Oh, I'd really like to build this." And it depends on the age group. I've had everything from a year 7 child, "Can we build a chair that when you sit on it, it farts?" up to year 10s who say, "Can we have a camera entry system so that when you walk into the classroom, it plays a little tune for us." And we tinker around, and some of those ideas I'll take and think, yeah, that's a really good idea. Let's build a camera that when it picks you up and it recognizes you in walking into a room, it plays a certain song for you and stuff like that. So I do have that, through work, I do have that disposal of being able to chat to kids and see what things they want to build, and of course the younger they are, the more the more the wild and creative their imaginations are. It's like that kind of Roald Dahl kind of building a car that runs on toothpaste and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm quite lucky in that sense. I've got a lot of input of can you try this, sir, or can we buy this, can we try that out as well, which is good.
That's fantastic. It never occurred to me that they were going to be the ones giving you the ideas rather than you.
We started off with the Raspberry Pis. We obviously started off doing the basic skills on the Pi, and I said, look, let's make a hacking club. Let's make a club where you bring stuff in that you don't want, or we get old kit that people are going to stick in the bin. And what do you want to build? And what is it that you actually want to try and create? And as the kids get older, they've got more resilience to it, and they want to sit there and they'll come back every lunchtime and build. I think we built a couple of the robotic arms and stuff like that from Maplin when it was closing down, and they programmed them to. Well, I think they wanted the arms to wrestle actually, so that's what they ended up building, an interface to allow the arms to wrestle. So it's really good that they've got, but it's that creativity. Can you do this? Can you build a hat that when you walk into a room, it tells you the temperature and stuff like that? So it's good.
And Footleg, has that been your experience with the teams you've mentored in Pi Wars? Have the ideas come from them, or has it been a bit of give and take?
Some of the ideas have come from them, and some of them have needed ideas pushing to them. They often start with, as Dan was saying, they start with kind of amazing, crazy ideas, but when you've got a competition deadline to kind of constrain them to actually deliver on, that can kind of rein in that creativity a bit. They want to kind of put a kind of the biggest Nerf gun on the market on their robot, but they've absolutely no idea how to go about automating that and making it practical, or if it even is practical.
Trust me, it is possible.
I love the Kids Invent Stuff YouTube channel, Ruth and Sean, who take kids' ideas and actually build them, and they take insane kids' ideas and build them, and that's an immensely fun YouTube channel to watch, and we've got inspiration from them. In my own case, my son said to me one day, "Dad, could we build a proper lightsaber?" And one of my finished projects, you can see behind me in the frame there, is the lightsaber we built. And I thought that was just going to be a kind of download the files off Adafruit's Learn Guide and kind of build it. And it actually was a superb learning project for me. It was my first exposure to Circuit Python on microcontroller boards. It taught me a ton about 3D printing, because my son didn't want the Adafruit lightsaber. He wanted his own design that he'd drawn sketches for. So we kind of worked through that together and kind of dissected the Adafruit model and then built up his design on top of that kind of skeleton. And so yeah, definitely I never cease to be amazed what I learned from kids.
Okay, if you're just joining us, we're in the Makers panel. I hope you've all got your lunches now. Now, I do want to bring people on to ask questions by video. I would love to do it. We've got the ability to do it on this application. So somebody please click the share button so that I can bring you in. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep on reading questions.
We'll give you an applause. All of us will cheer.
Okay, a question from David. Are any of you doing virtual Pi Wars this year with schools, and how have they been coping with the lockdowns?
So I was going to be doing, I had two school teams from the pre-lockdown era, but the constraints the schools are under meant that there was just no way to kind of resurrect that. I ran an after-school robotics club there, but because it mixed year groups, it just completely was impossible with their COVID kind of separation of year groups policy. So now, unfortunately, all of my school activities are parked at the moment.
Interested to hear more, because I feel like the computer science industry, we're quite lucky that it's only when you get to like my age, or if you're in work or something, then haven't been super affected by COVID, because tech stuff lends itself well to remote work. I worked for Amazon over the summer and just did that completely remotely. Never went in once. But yeah, I find with schools, when I think back to how the stuff that we had, like a embed robotics, for example, and things like that, and definitely those really physical things are the things that I found most engaging as a child. And that's kind of why I'm interested in robotics now. So it is a shame that you say, Paul, that like stuff is a little obviously parked for the moment.
This is an interesting subject, actually, from a lockdown point of view. I was wondering if anyone's got any changes in their maker's life as a result of lockdown, for better or for worse. For me, it's actually been a bit of both. Hey, we've got Daniel's come on. Hello. I guess he didn't mean to do that.
That sounded like an electric guitar.
Daniel, if you do want to come on, click the button again when you're not going to give us feedback. Yeah, okay. So Rachel just said it. The negative thing, I guess, for me is that I've not been able to go into Makespace, which is somewhere that I love going and using the workshop and all that kind of stuff. And the positive thing is that I've actually been having a lot more frequent meetings with makers, certainly before Christmas anyway. I'm feeling guilty that I haven't been back to them. But on video chat online, we've got a little makers group that Rachel and Rob and Footleg run, where we have a video chat every Wednesday night. And it's just lovely.
Yeah, there's also Brian's Robotics Club he does every month. So because they in person, they would be in Cambridge, which I wouldn't be able to attend being in Sheffield. But because they're online, I'm actually able to join in and participate, which has been nice.
Yeah, it has opened up a lot of online activities that were previously only based in a particular area. I've joined a lot of the Preston Raspberry Jams over lockdown and got to meet different people through that, and in fact through that discovered the Essex Steamettes coding group, who are a girls coding group based in Southend, and they invited me, after seeing my lightsaber on the Preston Jam, to come and present my lightsaber project to them, and that then went on to have some of them start working on building their own lightsabers, and my daughter's now become a regular on their group. So it has kind of opened up horizons that weren't there before, because things used to be based around where you lived rather than being kind of accessible to all.
Yeah, I think in school, obviously, Raspberry Pi Club happened at lunchtime for an hour. And if it didn't happen on lunchtime, it was after school for an hour. And of course, then you had all of the constraints. So, a child gets a bus home and they have to leave, or they've got sports practice, or they're in detention. Whereas now, what I'm finding is, yes, they've got remote learning, but some of the students are doing their week's worth of lessons. They're doing them Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday morning, getting everything out of the way, and then having 2.5 days or so to do what they want. So there's one lad, and he built a game in Scratch, and he'd worked on it for a day and a half. And I did say to him, "What about your other schoolwork?" "Oh no, I've done that already. I got up at 7 o'clock on Monday and I did all of my work, and I did it all Tuesday, so I've got the rest of the week to do this." And I thought that's the difference with lockdown, is they've got that dedicated time. It's not, I've got half an hour to do this, and then I've got to do maths, English, and then I've got to go to football practice, and then they have got more time, or they've got a longer period of time. They can take half an afternoon to build a game in Scratch, rather than it being half an hour at lunchtime. So in some ways, that's really positive. I think it's allowed a lot more students and children and makers in general, that time to be able to say, right, I'm going to have half an hour on this today.
I need to talk to this about getting my uni work out the way.
Yeah. Send it over, I'll do it. Yeah.
But I actually feel the same way about my actual work in some ways. Like I feel I've been able to do a lot more deep work more easily because once the meetings are over, it means I can block out the rest of the time however I want. So, you know, if I want to blast through a bunch of tickets and then spend the rest of the day on some sort of big project or something, I can do that.
There was a story. It's
so yeah, it's not all in the end of the world.
I was going to say there was a story about a taxi driver in New York, and she loved doing art, was a painter, but she obviously had to make a living in New York. So she became a taxi driver, and she worked out how many hours she'd have to work in order to live in New York each week. And what she then did was she spent the time working those hours in one block. So she'd do 3 days of solid shifts, and that then left her 2 or 3 days to do her artwork. And it's a really different way of approaching it, because you think, hang on a minute, why would I work for 3.5 days or 3 days solidly? But what it afforded her then was 3 days to be able to sit down and do her artwork. And we've got this idea, haven't we, that you have to be at work from 9 o'clock till 5 o'clock, and it has to be production between those hours. Whereas I've seen a lot of the kids are more productive after 3 o'clock, and they do more work between 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock. So why are we forcing them to go into that box of 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock? And I think that's where the lockdown has been beneficial for the more creative and the hobbies, because they've been able to say, let me have the time in the morning to do my hobby, music or whatever, or sports or art or whatever, and then in the afternoon I'll do my work.
So we have actually got a couple of people who bravely put themselves forward to ask video questions. I'm going to try and bring in Daniel again, and hopefully we don't go massive feedback. Otherwise, you get cut off again. So you're coming on now. And after that, we've got David.
Hello. Yeah. I was here just for my applause, nothing else. Sorry about that earlier. I have a kind of everything set on the TV and my laptop with me, so I forgot that sound is coming from the wrong direction. So anyway. I have a question for you, because that is something I can do for faced after 2019 Pivos and made me not to enter next one, and probably next one as well. And it's kind of one of those, what to do in this situation, what would you do? So it was very, very simple. Our robot was there, did what he did, wasn't bad, can have some of improvement put into it, and can do even better, actually do what I was supposed to be done, minus all the accidents we had, and an accident actually included Raspberry Pi blowing up at the end, our distance sensors were smashed in a Pi-Moon, and these kind of things. But never mind that. So I had just one little problem I wanted to fix and continue building on it. Our wheels were slightly wobbly. I didn't have a proper hub, so I just kind of 3D printed it and put the wheel directly onto the micro motors and kind of tighten it up. So it ended up being ever so slightly out of being true. So in order to do so, I decided I should kind of design and print a new set of wheels with wheel hubs on them. While I'm doing it, I could actually look into replacing micro motors which were just at the right level, slightly more geared, couldn't do, slightly less geared, were already too slow. So I started looking into better motors for driving wheels. But while I was there, I realized that actually motors which were turning wheels, steering them, because each wheel could actually steer 360 on our robot, then those were even worse. They were just right. I couldn't kind of go with micro motors anymore. So I started looking into better motors for those, and even maybe replacing them with brushless with the right kind of gearing. But while I was there, those motors should kind of be put properly in our chassis, and then we could really benefit of making rigid chassis out of PCB rather than of a printed plastic and then all the bits and pieces mounted on it. And I was looking at that, and now you understand where I'm going with this. So practically, I ended up from fixing wobbly wheels onto another 3 years worth of work. which immediately kind of put me off and said, no, I can't do this. I don't have enough time to fix wobbly wheels. So how do you approach these kind of problems?
Yes, scope creep, absolutely. Clement said in chat, scope creep. Because when you started off, it sounded like you'd maybe hit a yak shaving problem. I don't know if you're familiar with yak shaving.
I know.
But, yak shaving is a slightly different problem where you need to do one thing and something else is preventing you from doing that, and something else is preventing you from doing that, and eventually you get far enough down the chain and you're ending up shaving a yak to fill a pillow with yak hair, because that's one of the very low down the list of the chain. You get to this completely unrelated problem. But this is the problem where you've got all these ideas and you need to know at which point to stop. So when do you stop? Is it, are we talking minimum viable product? Is that
yes,
thing?
But again, PyWars, I bet that many will agree with me, are not there for creating the minimum viable product that wins the game. It is the outlet for doing all the crazy stuff you can't do anyway. So you want to try them out, even though they are slightly overblown, out of proportion, not quite fit for purpose, but they're cool.
I can see this resonating with Summit in the chat, as I'm picturing his PyWars experience as you describe yours as, and I've been there as well.
That's my main problem. Just can't kind of stop, especially now I've reached some level. I can't just accept minimal change in order to do the required. It has to be proper, and then now it kind of blows out of proportion.
I think the key is to do one crazy thing at a time. So your robot continues to evolve but remains viable. Because if you try and do all the ideas you've got at once, then you end up, as you're finding, that it's an open-ended problem that never reaches a kind of point where you think, I'm happy that this is go forwards. So try and keep it functional with each idea and layer them on. Yes, but you're missing one little detail. To do it that way, it takes longer time, and this is hobby. And for PyWars, I bet that many started with nothing and built up to some kind of idea they had relatively quickly. And that was what kind of kept us doing it. Now, scaling it back and doing it one little thing at a time and spend time on it, it kind of doesn't resonate anymore. But anyway, that's the problem I kind of wanted to share with everyone.
It's a problem. It's a problem that we all have with our robots. And this is one of the reasons PyWars is great, because it gives us a deadline. And that's what, for me, stops me from doing those things. It's if I've signed up to be in PyWars, I'm going to keep doing it until the night before PyWars. And there's going to maybe be a new feature added that morning before I compete. I'm conscious of time on the panel, so I'm going to move on to our next video caller, if that's okay.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you very much, Daniel. We've got David on the line, and I'm going to use as much of the time as we can, if that's okay with you guys. We'll go up to the next session. I guess we'll take 5 minutes before the next session. Is David here? No, David's not coming on. Okay, cool. Rishan had a question, and it was reiterated.
Hi, sorry, yeah.
Oh no, David is here. Okay,
my camera for some reason. Right, my question. So I've got a couple of questions, really. So the first one's more of a generic one for everybody, and that is, I found myself during lockdown, I've been trying to keep myself entertained and inspired by going online and looking at stuff. Now, as a direct response to that, has anyone else here had the issue of having just random packages that they may or may not have purchased online just suddenly turning up, like, power boards, fans, auto leveling kits for 3D printers, sort of accelerometers, or what they want to call them, and maybe even sort of, magazines and stuff like that? Has anyone else seen this as well, or is it just me?
You may have noticed earlier I ran out of the call for a few seconds. That's because my Pi Hut delivery just arrived and I had to go and open the door to the postman.
Yeah.
AliExpress is the worst, or stuff coming from China, because it's going to be 2 months later. I can't
I've
remember
had
what I
that
ordered.
issue.
It's going to be like
So I've been
that.
using kind of
Awesome.
Kickstarter as a way of getting random things to turn up, kind of a year or more after you ordered them, and it was good fun for the first year. But I've now reached the point where I've got so many Kickstarter things which I just haven't had time to, because by the time they arrived, I kind of had a full project list of things I was working on. So they're sat on the shelf. I've got a laser projector that I backed just after the last physical Pi Wars competition that's turned up, and I haven't done anything with. I've just got a 3D OpenCD camera arrived. So I've kind of gone for a lower cost option now, and I've started every week. I kind of just order a few little bits and pieces from AliExpress. So I've ordered some fans that might be quieter for my 3D printer. I've ordered some interesting looking nozzles and I thought, and if I just spend a few quid each time, then I'm just going to have a steady trickle of surprise make parcels turning up, and it will kind of keep me entertained through the rest of lockdown.
Yeah, no, that's what I've been. So the other question I had was also one that Mike sort of posed as well, is 8 bits and a Byte. What has been your favourite make so far?
Oh, that's difficult.
Choose between your babies.
No pressure.
For me, it's Ted the Toaster.
Yeah?
That was a toaster, a little evil toaster with a chatbot inside, and you could talk to it. And he was based on an evil toaster that wants to conquer the world. But that was before everything went to shit. So you could ask us questions like, what's your stance on minimum wage? And he would say, we appliances don't get paid. Why would you? Like, just tasteful enough. But it kind of all came true and it went all to shit. So it's a bit of a double feeling. Like,
so it's kind of like an evil version of sort of Talkie the Toaster.
Yeah. He was proper evil. So that is by far my favorite.
Internet controlled robots. They're the most fun. You can see people interacting with the stuff that's in your house. It's crazy. It's a really good feeling. It's really fun.
Yeah, I've been tempted myself to do similar kind of Twitter related posts where someone tweets and it'll change the color or something, or it'll make something move. I know Mark Mellors did one a while back, which was a massive inflatable rabbit which had LEDs inside it that lit up at night. That was quite an impressive one.
Oh yeah, definitely do it. I would say.
I'll have to have a try.
We like using Remo. That's like an online robot streaming platform, which is really cool.
Yeah, I've heard of that one. Yeah, I think Mike's used them before. But yeah, brilliant. All right, thank you very much. Yeah, I'll move on.
Thank you for coming on. You also get an applause.
Yay!
And actually, I'd like to put that question to the rest of the panelists as well. Actually, what's been your personal favourite make that you've done?
I think for me, the one I've had most fun with is the lightsaber, which I can't demonstrate for audio copyright reasons. It has all sorts of clips that it can play when you're kind of running around the house chasing the kids with it. And that's been a lot of fun for us in lockdown.
I think for me, my favourite thing that I've done in sort of the Pi world was probably the skateboard. I enjoy modes of transport. I find quite interesting, and so the skateboard was obviously one of those. They're a little bit illegal, actually, in the UK. Shame, but that was a lot of fun, and also, it's pretty cool to be able to get a bit of an adrenaline rush from something that you've made. Other ones that I've liked. Rob Kapinski is here, and he has his Sinclair. You still have that, Rob? You still have your Sinclair C5? That's pretty cool. So like these modes of transport, I think, and remember in the original Cam Jams they had like that massive big track, or in the early Pi Wars and things, and so that's they're the sort of things that I think are really fun with Raspberry Pi.
Yeah, I can vouch for Robert's Sinclair C5 being fun. I've driven it around the Makespace car park, and it's pretty hairy. You have to be careful that you weren't going to kind of roll it.
Brian Starkey has popped up with a question. Let's see if we can bring him on.
And now we made a commitment, right?
We're trying.
Okay, I'll
Keep going with your favourite
not
things, anyway.
Raspberry Pi based.
Chris,
But,
what's your favourite thing
a
you've
few years back, I did an external graphics card project for my old laptop, and that was really nice because there were guides and stuff of how to do it, but it was all sort of on the edge of will it work, won't it work? But I ended up making a nice enclosure for it, and the thing this was nice and worked for a few years. But what was kind of nice and makes it kind of my favourite was the fact that a lot of people took interest in it, both on the YouTube video but also on the case itself, because there was nothing yet like it. So it's kind of favourite because it was the most popular in a way, and the fact it was genuinely useful for the time I used it. I could run the 2016 Doom on a laptop that wouldn't run it otherwise, it wasn't powerful.
Brian, welcome. I just want to hear Dan's favourite project before we go to you. And then you get to
I think
ask
probably
our last
mine is
question.
the rotary telephone battleships. But it was two projects in one, and it was, for me, it was so complicated and challenging, and I learned so much, and I spoke to so many people, and it's got LEDs on it, which is fantastic. But I got a big sense of achievement and satisfaction when I actually got it working. I'll put the link to the video in the chat, but I think that's the one. But what's weird though is I find that I don't know what other people think, sometimes you spend lots of time on a project and it's complex, and yet it doesn't seem to have that same resonance with people, and yet sometimes you can stick a couple of LEDs on a glove and and people love it, and it's
so true. So
it's
true.
funny.
It has no relation now how long the project is.
Thank you.
It's a very
Brian,
short question, but maybe
shoot.
hard to answer. What is your favourite tool?
3D printing. Basically, I've been able to do so many projects because of it that I wouldn't be able to because I don't have any manufacturing capabilities otherwise.
The internet, is that a tool? I mean,
Sure,
it's the best
that
tool
works.
there is.
Absolutely.
You want to do something, you can find it online how to do it.
Yeah,
Someone
very true.
will help you along the way. Yeah.
You can even make your own things online.
In a
It's one
similar
of my favourite things to do.
cameras. I think it's pretty cool that you can share the stuff that you've done on a YouTube channel or a blog or on Twitter or something. And similar to what 8 Bits and a Byte just said, the fact that we have access to all these cool videos and stuff that serves for great inspiration and tutorials and things.
Yeah, chat, feel free to suggest your
I think
favourite tools as well.
I'll throw in my soldering iron as the tool that I'm probably getting most use out of in my projects at the moment, as I'm learning surface mount soldering and designing PCBs. It's getting a lot of use.
Those tiny screwdrivers, those electronic screwdrivers, those are my pick.
Oh yeah,
They're really
so
good.
that's actually good.
Definitely be lost
A
without
bit
those.
lost because we only have big screwdrivers or really small
It
screwdrivers.
is.
So they save our
It's
lives
great.
on the regular.
I agree.
Cool, my most
thank you.
You can't beat I'm going to say you can't beat a notebook though, can you? Just scribbling your ideas down, and that's important for me. Just that I used to write things down on paper, and then you'd end up with like loads of sheets of paper, and they get lost and everything. I just thought, right, buy a notebook, just write stuff down. And I think for me that's the main tool. Go back to it time and time again and read it, and I had that idea, or this isn't working and stuff. So it's good.
I was going to say my most satisfying tool to use is my tiny little ratchet spanner set that I bought to get to awkward place nuts inside robots, a little Weira ratchet spanner set.
I love a Dremel when you've got the if you've got a really thin drill bit and you think you're a dentist when you sound like a dentist. I could have been a dentist.
So our favourite tools are basically
Variety is the
tools.
spice of life, I think.
Okay, I think that has to be where we leave it. Unfortunately, I know we could keep going, and I haven't asked any of you about the Pi Pico. There's so much more we could talk about, but that has to be it for today. So thank you so much to our panelists and our audience for joining us. And we will be back in 1 minute with Rishan talking about artificial intelligence and machine learning.
Thank you for having
us.
us.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.